Hey guys, Alex here from the DM's Club on the Titan Bear Gaming YouTube channel. Welcome to Dungeon Mastery 104, Exploration. In the last video I talked about the pillars of adventure, being exploration, social role-playing, and combat. In today's video we're talking about exploration. What does it mean at your table, how do you get ready for it, and how do you run it? Now at its core, exploration is the discovery of new places. This could be going off to exotic, far-off locations and seeing strange wildernesses, or it could be going to new cities and interacting with new NPCs and new characters that have different ways of life than what your players are used to. It can also be going and delving down into the bottom of dungeons or lost ruins or lost temples and seeing what secrets the players can uncover. And how this manifests at your table is with description. It's with you, the storyteller, describing these new and interesting places to your players. It's going to be the thing that you start your game off with, and it's going to be the thing that you end your game with, and it's going to be the glue that holds on to everything that's in between the start and finish of your game. Now, exploration in the game usually breaks down into two parts. Scene establishment, which is establishing where your players are located. Whenever they walk into a new place, or they open a door and go into the next room of a dungeon, or if they're visiting a new town or some other kind of landscape, use things like descriptive words, like what they can see, what they can smell, what they can hear, what does it feel like, how warm or cold is it. Invoke any of the senses that you can to impart the feeling of the scene to your players. And the other part is scene interaction. Once you've set the scene for your players are going to want to try to do things within that scene. They're either going to want to try to further explore or investigate what else they can find, opening up containers, walking through doors, going on to next rooms, or they're going to try to move around within that scene. Maybe they're going to want to try to jump across things or climb through things or find unique ways out of whatever room they're in presently. Your players are going to want to touch the scene, feel the scene, involve the scene, as well as try to make changes to what's going on. And the way that you handle that as the dungeon master is by having them make skill checks to interact with their environment. If you're following along with this series, then you've got an adventure module that you are currently prepping to run yourself. The printed adventure modules come with, in the beginning of each of these new locations or cities or landscapes, they come with a blurb of descriptive text. So go ahead and pre-read those. Make sure that you know what those are going to say. Yes, you can read them while you're at the table. You don't have to have them memorized, but you should have a basic gist of what it is that it's trying to say and what the feel is that it's trying to say. These blurbs are deliberately short. You're probably going to have to embellish on them or add a little bit of your own descriptive text and a little bit of narrative for yourself when you're reading this to them at the table. The other thing that you can do to get ready is if there are any maps that are printed with the module, go ahead and make separate copies of those. If you can make a table-sized copy for your players to play on directly, maybe for an overland map or for a map of the dungeon or a town that they're going to be visiting, go ahead and do so. That will help out a lot. Otherwise, if you can use them as handouts or even just to have it as a reference thing on your side of the Dungeon Master screen, it will help you a lot in terms of managing where your players are going in the game and keeping track of that. One more thing that you can do to get ready is to just mentally prepare yourself for what the cadence of the game is going to feel like. You describe, you set your scene, you tell the players what's happening in the scene, and the players tell you what they'd like to do with it. Then you narrate the response. You narrate what happens when the players try to do that kind of thing. And the players then continue to say what else they'd like to do. And it's this back and forth that's the natural cadence for describing and exploring the game world. Now, when you find yourself at the table, the first thing that you're going to do to start off your session is describe to your players their starting location. Where are they? What are they trying to do? What kind of story details have you already given them so far so that they've got some sense of motivation of what they're trying to achieve for that gaming session? Now, it's generally a good idea to also give them some kind of understanding of where their current location fits into the scheme of the larger world, the overarching world around them. What kingdom are they in? Are they in a certain country? By specifying these details, it helps give them the impression that there are places other than this particular country, and that any of the choices that the characters are going to make in their game will have real-world ramifications on the rest of the world. It helps convince them that there is this living and breathing world that they are just a part of. Now, once your players have an idea of where they are and they start thinking about what they'd like to do, you're probably going to be running into skill checks. Now, you're going to run a skill check anytime that the players want to do something or interact with the environment or change the environment, and that there should be some level of chance for failure for the outcome of what they're trying to do. Now, when you tell your players to make a skill check, you're going to tell them which skill you'd like them to use, and then they'll roll their d20 and add the appropriate modifier for that skill. While they're doing that, you need to decide in your head what the difficulty class, the DC of that skill check, is going to end up being. And it should scale based on how hard or how easy the action is that the player is trying to do. You'll develop a sense of what exactly this should be, but for your starting round, I suggest using the method that Matt Colville recommends, recommends, which is using the numbers 12, 15, or 18. If something is a reasonably easy thing to do, but you still want them to make a skill check for it, set the DC to 12. It's low enough that it's not that big of a deal, and most people will succeed when they want to if they roll high enough. Use 15 for medium level skills, for things that might be a little bit harder to do but aren't necessarily hard, and then use 18 for the stuff that you want to be difficult and to only really succeed when the player rolls well and has a good modifier for it. Now for exploration in particular, and as you're simply describing the scenes as your players move through the world, you're going to be doing a lot of skill checks. Exploration is a very skill check heavy thing. If your players want to simply look around in the environment and to try and see what they can find in the environment, you're going to be using the skills perception or investigation. Perception is for when they're just generally looking around, and investigation is when they're trying to find something in particular, like traps or a hidden door. You can also have them do a sleight of hand check or use their thieves tools for if they want to try to disarm a trap on that door or on a chest or something. If your environments have complicated natural landscapes, or if there's pits that need to be jumped, or if there are barriers in their path, then your players are probably going to want to be making athletics checks or acrobatics checks to try and overcome those obstacles. If your players are moving from one town to the next town, or they're leaving one town and heading off to some kind of ruins that's a couple of days travel away, you're going to want to use survival as the skill check for helping the players determine whether they're navigating successfully, if they need to try and forage to find some food along the way, or maybe if they're hunting someone down, maybe there's tracks that they're trying to follow. That will be used for a survival skill check. Now for all of these skills, you are then to describe what happens regardless of whether or not the players succeed or fail at the given skill check. And it is important to narrate for both the success and the failure cases, because it helps your players to understand that no matter what they do and no matter whether they succeed or fail at their skill check, that it progresses the story forward, that there's some kind of consequence, that there's some kind of effect of what they do in the game. And that's how you impart meaning to the player's actions. If they fail, you can narrate things in a couple of different ways, and it's kind of up to you to decide how you want to progress this in the game. You can either have them fail outright and then decide whether or not they can make another attempt at it, or if somebody else should make an attempt, or you can have them almost succeed, that maybe they need to make another check, and if they make the check on the second time, then they manage to. This could be, for an example, like if someone's trying to climb up on a rock structure or something and they're making an athletics check to climb up. Maybe they only barely get their hands on the edge instead of making the whole jump or the whole climb, and they have to try one more time, and if they make it the second time, then they pull themselves up. Almost successes and almost failures are a really great way to introduce more tension to your drama. Now, like I said, you're going to be spending the vast majority of your time as a dungeon master doing the basic concept of exploration, describing the scene, doing interactions for when your players want to do something with it, asking them to make a skill check if it's appropriate, and then narrating the results of what happens, and then continuing back and forth with this cadence. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're not really sure what to do next, or you feel like the tempo of the game has been derailed, just drop back to the beginning of this cycle of narrating to your players, describing to your players where they are right now, re-establish the scene, re-describe for them where they're at. For the most part, if players feel stumped about something, it's because they've lost the details in their head of where they're located, and simply being reminded is often enough to put them back on track. So hopefully that's enough to get you started with thinking about how you will then run exploration at your game table. For your plot map that you've got as you're getting ready to run your first adventure, go to each of the places where you have flagged it as exploration and start thinking about the descriptive text that you want to use, what the feel is for the place that you're going to be operating at, and how you're going to describe it to your players, as well as start running through the mental gymnastics of what kinds of skill checks might your players try to do at each of these places. Because this is the bread and butter of being a dungeon master, you're going to be doing it a lot, and so you're going to get a lot of good practice at it. If it seems a little bit scary at first, don't worry, you're going to do it all the time, and you'll get real good at running skill checks. So the next video that I'm going to do is on social role-playing. That's pillar number 2 of the pillars of adventure. That'll be the next video, followed by combat. And like this one, I'll be covering which are the necessary skills and what kinds of rules you might need to know as a new dungeon master to be able to run that at your table. So go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel so you can see when those next ones come out. If you've got any specific questions about exploration and how you run exploration in your game, feel free to leave me a comment down below. I'll be happy to answer it here, or come find me over on social media. I'm at Titan Bear Gaming at basically all forms of social media, and I'm pretty active on Twitter, so if you want to talk to me about it, you can come talk to me over there. I think that's it. Until next time, have more fun, would you? It's good for you.